Well, it's time for us to review our Sunday school lesson for today. Today we are in our fall quarter for the months of September, October, and November. And our fall quarter is entitled Celebrating God. This quarter, we're looking at the acts of worship and praise that celebrate who God is and what he has done for his people. We're in unit number 1 for the month of September, entitled God's People Offer Praise. And we're looking at the lives of a few people who had a reason to celebrate God. Well, our lesson today is lesson number 3 for September 19th, 2021, entitled Celebrating Expectantly. And our printed text is Mark chapter 10, verse number 46 through 52. And our text today is a familiar story that many of us can recall and remember, story of Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus was blind, and he received his sight from God. And one thing we can learn from Bartimaeus today is that even while we may not be able to see it, we still have a reason to praise God with expectancy. Bartimaeus shows us that even before we see it, sometimes even before we receive it, sometimes even before we have it, we can expect God to do for us what we need him to do when we ask him. Bartimaeus shows us that sometimes even before we see it, before we receive it, before we have it, we can expect God to do it for us and do exactly what we need him to do when we ask him. Notice in Bartimaeus' story, he heard the commotion and he cried out to Jesus. And because he had an expectancy of what he asked would be done, despite what others were saying, by telling him to be quiet and don't disturb the master, he kept on crying out to Jesus. Despite the situation, him being blind and unable to see, the Bible still says he got up, threw off his cloak that was on him, and went to see Jesus. And even despite the whole situation, Bartimaeus knew what Jesus could do, and he cried the more and the louder to get what he needed from God because of his expectancy. Now, as we close, our major point today is that even when we ask God for something, we have got to know that God can provide us with what we need. When we ask him, we have to expect that God will answer and provide us with what we need sometime, even if it's a miracle, something that is unexplainable, something that does not fit reason or logic. We still have to know God is able. And we have to know that even before we ask, we shall receive from God because that's who he is. And because of that expectation, we can go ahead and shout even before we have it. We can shout even before we see it. We can shout even before we receive it because of the expectancy that we have in God. I pray that all of us can learn like Bartimaeus and cry out to God, knowing that he will provide and meet all of our needs.